Okay, all these lectures I've shared with you about the evolution of Taoism throughout Chinese history are very confusing. I realize that because there's a lot of information that's not vital. There is a lot of Chinese language that's hard to remember. So these guided notes are my attempts to try to put some order to all of that, to hit the highlights. So I've published a note-taking, a guided note template right above this video. So you should print that or download it and write on it with something like DocHub. But here are my notes. So on the left, you'll see a timeline of Chinese history. And starting back 3,000 years ago, which, we're talking about prehistoric, non-historic time, basically, we had people settling in the Chinese river valleys, and they were shamanic. Their religion was shamanic. They had these shamans who could do all these amazing things, and so all ancient hunter-gatherer societies, almost all, had shamans, but they tended to end with the opening of actual historic time. However, in the early Zhou dynasty, this earliest historical dynasty of China, the shamans remained, and they did some of the things that Taoist priests do today, like, for example, make rain. So, shamanic origins. It's a lot of strange, magical stuff happening back there, but Taoism has its roots in that period. Now, after the fall of the Zhou, we had these 500 years of non-unified China, massive feudal states that gradually became more and more consolidated. It's called the classical period because this is when Chinese classics were written, things like the Analects of Confucius and the Tao Te Ching of Lao Tzu. But it's broken into two periods, up 500 years, broken into two periods, spring and autumn period and the warring states period. Lao Tzu lived in the spring and autumn period. He wrote the Tao Te Ching, and two key ideas is that the Tao of this period was a benevolent force, a good force. And secondly, this Taoist philosophy was not an outright rejection of government and society. In fact, a Taoist sage was considered the ideal potential ruler for a feudal state. That would change later. The Warring States period, things get darker, more nihilistic. This is, and Lao Tzu, his successors were Zhuangzi and Lides, particularly Zhuangzi, and they each wrote eponymous books. The Tao of this period is a neutral force. The world is darker and people are more negative, and so we can't assume the Tao is naturally good, but it's neutral. Also, this era was an outright rejection of government society. It condemned social norms, and the ideal Taoist sage in this period was a dropout, basically, dropped out of society because it couldn't be fixed. Then the Qin Emperor unites China briefly, and then for 400 years the Han dynasty rules. And so there are no feudal states, so there's no longer this market for these roaming statecraft thinkers, people like Confucius and Lao Tzu. And so they sort of morph into what's known as the Feng Shi. They use their longevity arts instead, and there was this sort of separation between magic versus longevity. One group of Feng Shi practiced longevity, and their patrons were the upper classes. Another practiced talismanic magic, things like making it rain and having good crops, and their clientele obviously was the lower classes, because lower classes couldn't indulge in worrying about longevity. Their lives were pretty brutal. Also, there was a hierarchy of spirits that sort of emerged. They had been there all along. The Moist of the classical period had preserved all these local shrines, and these were kept up, and we sort of see a change from, just like we saw it from philosophical Hinduism to devotional Hinduism, or from a philosophical form of Buddhism to a form of Buddhism that had devotional deities. Same thing happens. We see this hierarchy of spirits, And finally, in 150 of the Common Era, the Han Emperor actually erected a shrine for Laozi. So Laozi himself has now been made into a deity. And the most important figure of this era was Zhao Daoling. He had a transcendental experience in a cave. He was visited by Laozi. He was named the first celestial master, the heavenly master. And there's a lineage of heavenly masters down to today. It's still a major branch of Taoism. And we see the first revealed scripture called the Book of Peace and Balance. We also see the popularity of talismanic magic. Zhao Daoling was very, very skilled with talismanic magic, and that became a hallmark of Celestial Masters Taoism. There was a northern school and a southern school, headed by these guys, not that important. And kind of simultaneous with this, we saw the development of Shangqing Taoism. This is mystical Taoism we talked about. Two key ideas: keeping the one, holding the Tao within you, and guardian spirits in the body. There were monsters and guardian spirits in the body, so we had to practice these internal alchemical exercises to keep the one and keep the guardian spirits in the body. All right. Then, in the medieval period, the Tang Dynasty, which was very successful, and then a period of disunity after that called the Five Dynasties and 10 Kingdoms, saw the rise of alchemical Taoism, based on alchemy. Wei Po Yang is the grandfather of alchemical Taoism. He wrote a book called The Triplex Unity. And at this point, Taoist alchemists practiced both internal and external alchemy. Internal meaning the body contained all the necessary needs for longevity. You simply had to practice all these internal alchemical exercises, Raja Yoga type stuff. And the external, which was a Tang imperial quest for a long time, was to find a pill, a magic golden pill that would infer longevity, living forever, basically. And this was what was known in Europe as the Philosopher's Stone. A lot of people died in experiments to find this golden pill, and so ultimately that died out. But as they sort of separated these two branches, the great patriarch of internal alchemy was a guy named Lu Dongbin, and he's also one of the 8 immortals, famous immortals of Taoism. And he's sort of the grandfather of this internal version. He had several students, one named Wang Chongchang, and so some of these students practiced during the Sung Dynasty up through the modern era, the Qing Dynasty, which fell in 1911. You saw a synthesis of Taoism, Buddhism, and Confucianism. And so this was thought to be, the complete view of transcendence. So it was known as the complete reality school. There was a northern and a southern branch. Wang Chongchang, student of Lu Dongbin, maybe not directly, but a student of his student, I can't remember. But he was important. He was the leader of the northern school. Zhang Baoduan was the leader of the southern school. But they both flow from Lu Dongbin. The northern school said, control the mind first, learn the meditation, and then the body, the Raja Yoga stuff, the psychophysical exercises. Southern school said, no, learn that stuff first, and then the mind will quiet itself. The northern branch was much better organized. Southern branch was not, and didn't fare well under the Yuan, the Mongols. And it morphed into something we call today action and karma Taoism. Taoism largely concerned with good works. And so today we have 2 major branches, one going back to the Celestial Masters, also known as the Orthodox Unity, a branch of Taoism, and the Complete Reality School, which goes back to those successors of Lu Dongbin. And that is a really quick historical overview of Taoism.